Hello everyone. So in this video we're going to discuss the first two problems of Codeforces round 831, which was rated for division 1 and division 2. So let us quickly start with the first problem. The first problem says that there's a person which has a prime number n and we have to find a prime number m such that n plus m is not prime. So basically we have been given a prime number and we have to find another prime number such that their summation is not a prime number, right? So if you carefully look at this question, now there are two cases. If you consider this, then the first case is that the number that the given input is 2, right? And you know that 2 is the only even prime number, right? So this is the only even prime number. So if there is another input other than 2, I'm assuming it that the input would be odd, right? Now if the input is odd, then I can easily just add another odd number to it and make it even, right? So if I am given any input other than 2, I can just add any odd number that is a prime number and it can be 3, right? So both of these number would give me an even number, and this even number would obviously be a not prime number or a composite number. Now in case of 2, what I can do is I can just add 2 to it and that would be 4, and again it is a non-prime number, right? So this is one way of looking at this particular question. Now the other way is if you have been given an input n, you can just straight away add n to it, because if the given input is n, then this is also prime and their summation would be 2n. So this is a multiple of 2, so the number 2n is not a prime number, right? You can do it in either of the ways. Either you can just print the number n itself, or you can form two cases. If n is equals to 2, you can just print 2. In any other case, you can just print 3, right? So this is the solution for the first question. I have taken the input n, and for n is equals to 2, I have printed 2, otherwise I have printed 3. So moving on to the second question for today's contest, which is jumbo extra cheese 2. So this particular question says that we have been given some boxes essentially, and all of those boxes has like dimensions of ai cross pi. Now it says that each edge of the cheese is parallel to the x-axis and the y-axis. So like it should not be at any angle to the x-axis, it should be parallel to it, right? As in this particular case, right? The second thing is bottom edge of the cheese is a segment of the x-axis. So I'll explain what this particular statement means. This means that, like, if you see here, all the four boxes, all of these boxes are touching the bottom x-axis, right? So this should be the case. It cannot be like this, where all the, like, here they are four boxes, but one of them is not touching the bottom x-axis. So this should not be the case, and all of them should be touching the bottom x-axis, right? Now the third condition is none of those should overlap, but their sides can touch and they should form one connected shape. So they should be put all together, and we have to form, like, arrange them in such a way such that the total perimeter is the minimum possible. Now one way to go around this question is if you carefully observe the values. So for example, if I have been given a box, right, this is the length and this is the width. So I am allowed to make any rotations such that it is still parallel to both of the axes. So the only rotation I am able to make is like this, right? I can rotate it 90 degree to, like, move this width to the bottom so that it becomes the length, or let us just call it some better, let us just consider this width and this is the height. So when I rotate it by 90 degree, the height becomes the width and the width becomes the height, right? So this is the only change I'm able to make. Now if I've been given some series of boxes like this, right? So if I want to calculate the perimeter of these series of boxes, you will observe that if you talk about the top and the bottom part, that is this part and this part, for all the boxes it would be the summation of all their widths multiplied by 2. So for summation for of all their widths, for one side for bottom and one side one time for the top part, that is why we are multiplying it by 2. So we are essentially like summing up all these values that are present at the bottom, right? These are the values we are summing, right? So we do it twice, once for the bottom and once for the top part. Now what this is one part of the whole perimeter. Now the second part would be like the summation of this and this, right? And again this and this and this and this. So we have to consider the height this time. Now the perimeter, like with respect to the height, would be the maximum of all those heights multiplied by 2. Why? Because if I talk about the perimeter, then this particular part is exposed to the outside, right? For this particular taller rectangle, what happens is this part is already covered, so the only extra part that is exposed is this extra part, right? So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just including the maximum height of all of these, right? And I'm doing the twice of it. Why? Because one time I have included it for the left side, and one time I have included it for the right side, right? So this is what I'm essentially doing. The answer to the perimeter question would obviously, if I have like decided in what arrangement I will form, like I will arrange all my boxes, then the answer would definitely be the summation of both of these values, where I just take the sum of the widths and multiply it by 2, and I take the sum of the and I take the maximum of the heights and multiply it by 2, and finally I'll sum both of these values, and this would give me my perimeter. So my perimeter would be equals to 1 plus 2, this value 1 and this value 2, right? Now the question is, how do we like arrange it optimally so that the value of this perimeter is minimum, right? So if I try to solve this particular question greedily, then I'll observe that it is always better to minimize the widths, right? For every box, my goal would be to minimize the widths. Why this works? Because if I have let's say a width x, right, and for the next box I'll have a width y, right? So for each and every box I'll just keep on adding these values x, y, z, right? I just have to keep on adding these value of the widths. Whereas if I talk about the height, then the height will only be considered once. If it is of x, then the final height would be x. If y is the maximum, then I'll have to take the maximum of this, and then the height would be y. If z is the maximum, then I have to take the maximum of this, and the height would be z. So essentially what happens is, at the end I'll just have only one of these values. So like in the case of the summation thing or the width, I'll have to keep on adding those values, whereas if I talk about the height, I'll just take the maximum. So it is always better to choose the smaller values for the summation part, right? So this is exactly what we will do. We will just take all the inputs like in the form of ai and bi. So let us consider it ai and bi, right? So these will be the input. I would obviously take the smaller of these to be the width. So minimum of these two would be my width, right? So this would be my width for the current box, and maximum of these two would be my height for the current box. So if I'm trying to calculate the perimeter, I would take the summation of all these values, and I will take the maximum value of all these values, and then again according to the perimeter formula I'll calculate my answer, right? So let us have a look at the code now. So I've initialized my answer, and the maximum or the max value is 0. Now I just loop through all the inputs, and I take the input as x and y. So what I essentially do is I just add the minimum of x and y to my answer, and set max as maximum of next comma, and the maximum among these two values x and y. At the end, what I'll do is I'll just add this maximum value to my answer and multiply my answer by 2. So in this case, what I just did was, if I multiplied it by 2 after adding both of those values, so it is essentially the same thing, right? So this is how we can solve the second question. And this was it for today's video. I hope you guys were able to understand the solution. So till the next video drops, keep coding, stay safe, bye bye.